Guys, what's going on? This is my post-ride review of the Yamaha R7. But before I dive too deep into this review, I've got to send a huge thank you and shout out to Hunter, Tommy, Rob, and the rest of the crew over at Stubbs Cycles. Guys, thank y'all so much for taking care of me, giving me the hospitality. I truly appreciate it. So, the Yamaha R7, what can I say about this bike that hasn't already been said? It is such a fun and lively machine to spend time on. And it's a motorcycle that the spec sheet truly does not do justice for. And what do I mean by that? Well, this motorcycle has a 689cc parallel twin. It's making roughly 75 horsepower. And for some, that would be a little bit of an overachieving number. But it makes that power at a very accessible 85-ish 100 RPM. And so because it makes all of that power so early in an RPM range, it means that you're kind of always in the fat part of the power band. It means the bike's lively to ride. It's very punchy and very eager. And that's something that I always find to be very charming about how an engine operates. And because of that, and the fact that this motorcycle only weighs about 415 pounds, and that's with a full tank of gas, all the fluids included, it makes for a really lively machine. And then you stack on top of that the fact this motorcycle is very narrow, very, very narrow in the hips. And so it feels so light and just weightless almost underneath you. It makes for a bike that is very confidence inspiring, and the way that the suspension is set up is very forgiving. And that leads me to another point with the R7. It does have an adjustable suspension where the rest of the field, unless you're talking about bikes that cost significantly more, they just don't have that option. And to be able to tune the suspension is kind of a big deal, especially if you're going to start getting into doing track days or you want to learn more about motorcycle setup. This bike has all the tools that you need. You've got compression and you've got rebound dampening with the front forks, and you have rebound and preload for the rear shock. So because of that, it does lend itself to be a little bit more on the sporty side. And that's the other cool thing about this bike. It's everything you need, nothing you don't. This motorcycle doesn't have riding aids, doesn't have modes or anything like that. Doesn't even have a quick shifter. It comes from the factory though on a set of Bridgestone S22s. Guys, these are some serious tires and they come on this motorcycle, and that is something that was kind of a cool thing to see. I mean, I run S22s on a GSXR 1000. You can imagine how well they grip with an R7. So because of all of that, and it doesn't have any technology with the screen either, no connectivity, no TFT, just LCD, all of that is kind of a neat trait for me. For somebody that is really more into the performance aspect and not really into the gadgets and gizmos as much, this bike was phenomenal. Add to that, it had such a snappy throttle and snappy throttle response that not having a quick shifter didn't really bother me. Oh, and that's another thing, kind of a side quest here, but when it comes to transmissions, the slickness of the transmission on the R7 is better than every other motorcycle that I have ridden to this day. It is that good, guys. Super buttery, not notchy, but it's still positive engagement. It's really that good. And so to have a quick shifter would almost do it injustice. And with this bike, you can still learn the technique of blip downshifting as well. So there's a lot that comes with this bike, especially when you consider it really more like a training aid. If you're just getting into track or you're just getting into spirited motorcycle riding, and again, performance is your focus, and this might be the best bike for you. So in saying all of that, how would it stack up against the field? Well, when you ride a motorcycle like the CBR 650 or the Daytona 660, and then compare it immediately to the R7, the first thing you're going to notice is the R7 has more punch all the time, just from a twist of the throttle. It's a pretty common nature of those parallel twins to deliver power like that. A four-cylinder in the Honda or a triple in the Triumph just isn't going to give quite that mid-range punch. And the neat characteristic of that is that short shifting the R7, you don't ever feel like you're lacking in performance. You don't feel like you really have to wring the thing out to 8, 9, or 10,000 RPM to get any real performance out of it. It's just always kind of there. And so because of that, it doesn't really feel slower, even though the spec sheet may lead you to believe that with only 75 horsepower versus 90 plus in some of these other machines. You'd think that it would just feel anemic by comparison, but it absolutely doesn't whatsoever. Now, if you noticed, I didn't drag the GSX-8R into this part of the conversation. Look, guys, yes, it's heavier, but it does make quite a bit more power, and it's punchy. It's got a parallel twin. It's a great bike, but it doesn't have the versatility that the R7 does in terms of the adjustable suspension. But it does have a quick shifter and a TFT screen. For a lot of guys, that may be all they need to make the switch. But they're very similar in most respects when it comes to a riding experience. So guys, if you've got an R7, I would love to hear about what you're up to with that machine. Is the R7 your first next bike? Is this your second bike that you picked up? Or maybe it's your third, your first real sport bike? I'd love to hear your thoughts on your bike. And if you're thinking about getting one, what'd you think about this review? Did it help you out at all? Post up and let me know. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you on the next one.